me now is Patricia DeGennaro. She is a professor of international affairs at NYU, New York University. Patricia, thanks so much for joining us. Given first that we don't know how many opposition groups are operating in Syria and that right now dozens of groups are attending the talks in Riyadh representing all their various interests, how effective do you expect these talks to be?
Well, it's good that the parties are talking, but I don't think this is going to be very effective because actually, you need to include Bashar al-Assad in there. He is still there. He's still the president of the country, and the country as a sovereign nation still needs to have his input in order to proceed or change. He is a secularist, and a lot of these groups are fighting to have a more Islamic type of state. And it's not clear that the Syrian people want to support that. He still has a lot of popular support, and I think it's hard to do any kind of movement forward without him.
During the Vienna talks, which included all the major international players with interests in Syria, it was so criticized that no Syrian opposition nor Bashar al-Assad was included there. Now we're seeing the same, really, in the opposite sense, are we not?
Yeah, we're seeing that exactly. There's really not much leverage the Syrian opposition has at this point. They have a lot of Western support and money is coming from those areas, but right now, the players are still the states and they're still in charge. And so I think, it's going to come down to more of Assad and the United States and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Russia to try to work this out and come to some kind of conclusion. There's so much going on the ground. I can't see how these talks are going to move anything forward until we can get some kind of clarity and get the fighting to stop.
And Patricia, what about Daesh? Is it absurd to think that maybe they could be included in negotiations at some point?
Well, most of Daesh leaders are thought to be or are known to be Iraqi, so I don't think that they necessarily should be included in the future of the Syrian country. But there has to be some kind of movement where their influence is mitigated in order to let the Syrian country come back together, stabilize, and allow some of these refugees and the government to start operating again so Daesh doesn't have control over, these types of influences on the population.
Would you ever be able to compare Daesh, the role of Daesh in the region, to what the Taliban was in Afghanistan earlier?
I think it's very similar to what the Taliban is. They're, a bunch of really not very nice people. They don't show any discretion in who they want to kill or what they want to do. They're very demanding on how women behave and how men behave, for that matter, whether they have a beard. I've spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, and I really don't see much of a difference. In fact, this Daesh group seems to be much more lethal against its own population than the Taliban, even though the Taliban was very, very violent.
Interesting. Okay. And Patricia, yes, we did have to include Taliban in negotiations at some point. It's very troublesome to think that may at some point be the case here, too. Thanks so much for joining us live.